You check your bank account balance on your 50th birthday. Over the last 20 years, you've earned more than $1 million. Salary bonuses, raises, it all added up to seven figures moving through your hands. Your account says $43,000. That's not a typo, that's the median. According to the Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances, the typical 50-year-old American earning a six-figure salary has a net worth of around $43,000. At 40, earning $80,000 a year, the median net worth is closer to $18,000. At 30, on $60,000 a year, it's about $7,000. 3 out of 4 people never crossed $100,000 in their entire lives, no matter how much they earned along the way. So where did the money go? Not to bad luck, not to low income. It went to 4 traps, and every single one of them is designed to feel completely reasonable in the moment. Researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko spent years studying self-made American millionaires for their book, The Millionaire Next Door, and their central finding cuts against almost everything people assume about wealth. The millionaires in their data weren't the highest earners in their neighborhoods. Doctors and lawyers on enormous salaries frequently had less net worth than the guy who owned the local scrap metal business. Income and net worth, it turns out, are only weakly related. What actually separated the two groups was what happened to the paycheck after it landed, which is exactly the part most people never examine. The first is lifestyle creep. Your salary jumps by $15,000 a year. Before that raise clears your account, twice your brain has already found somewhere to put it. A bigger apartment, a nicer gym, dinners that used to feel like a splurge and now feel routine. The upgrade doesn't feel like spending. It feels like finally getting what you've earned. But the raise didn't create wealth. It just moved the finish line. You're earning more and banking the same amount you always did. Nothing. You're running in place just faster. Run the numbers on 2 coworkers who start at the same salary. One banks every raise for 10 years straight, still living in the same apartment, still driving the same car. The other upgrades something every time income rises a little more each year, never dramatically, never anything that looks reckless from the outside. By year 10, their paychecks might look almost identical on paper. Their net worth doesn't. One of them has a growing pile of invested money quietly compounding in the background. The other has a slightly nicer version of the exact same life they had a decade ago and nothing underneath it. The second trap is what behavioral economists call the payments mentality. You don't ask, can I afford this car? You ask, can I afford $412 a month? That's a different question, and it has a different answer almost every time. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent his career studying how the human mind processes numbers, research that eventually became prospect theory. One of its central findings is that people don't judge choices by their true total value. They judge them by how the choice is framed. A $35,000 car framed as $412 a month doesn't feel like $35,000. It feels like less than a phone bill. So you sign. And a car payment, a phone plan, a financed couch, and a credit card minimum start eating your paycheck before you ever get the chance to decide whether investing mattered more. The third trap is time arbitrage failure, and it's quieter than the other two because it looks responsible. You're not overspending. You're just waiting. Waiting until you earn more. Waiting until you understand the market better. Waiting until it feels like the right moment to start. Meanwhile, your cash sits in a savings account, and the one input that actually builds wealth, time, keeps leaking away for free. 5 years of waiting to feel ready costs you more than picking an imperfect index fund today and simply letting it run. Compounding doesn't care how ready you feel. It only cares how long the money has been invested. Put a number on that waiting. Someone who invests $500 a month starting today at an 8% return crosses $100,000 in a little under 11 years. Someone who waits 5 years to get ready and then starts the exact same habit doesn't just lose 5 years off the front. They lose the 5 years of growth those first contributions would have earned on top of everyone else's contributions, compounding on top of compounding. By the time the second person catches up in total dollars contributed, the first person is already tens of thousands of dollars ahead, purely because their money started working sooner. There was no talent gap between them. There was only a calendar gap, and the calendar doesn't negotiate. The fourth trap is the most expensive because it looks like the solution instead of the problem: asset confusion. Robert Kiyosaki drew a simple line in Rich Dad, Poor Dad that most people never actually apply to their own life. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. By that definition, a car loses value every year and costs you insurance, gas, and repairs. It's a liability dressed up as a milestone. Designer clothes, the newest phone, a leased apartment with a view, all liabilities. But most people call them the things I've worked hard for, which is just another way of saying assets, even though not one of them ever pays you back. Meanwhile, the real assets, index funds, dividend stocks, a rental property that generates cash flow, sit untouched because they don't come with a badge you can show your friends this weekend. Here's why $100,000 specifically is the number that changes everything. At an 8% average return, $100,000 generates about $8,000 a year without you doing anything. That's roughly $666 a month, showing up whether you work that month or not. Getting from 0 to 100,000 is almost entirely a function of discipline. Every dollar of growth is a dollar you personally set aside. But once you cross it, the math flips. The account starts contributing alongside you. Getting from 100,000 to 200,000 doesn't require you to save twice as hard. It requires the same habits, now assisted by a machine that's finally big enough to help carry the weight. The first 100,000 is a fight against your own psychology. Everything after it is closer to arithmetic. So here's the sequence that actually gets someone there in the order it has to happen. First, kill high-interest debt before anything else. A credit card balance at 20% interest guarantees you a loss that no investment can consistently beat. Paying that off first isn't a conservative move. It's the highest guaranteed return available to you. Second, build a $10,000 emergency fund and leave it alone. Put it in a high-yield savings account, not a brokerage account, and treat it as untouchable except for genuine emergencies. Its entire job is to keep you from sliding back into debt the next time your car breaks down or you lose a paycheck. Third, automate the investing before you ever see the money. At least $500 a month, ideally more, moves straight from your paycheck into a broad index fund, an S&P 500 fund, or a total market fund the moment you're paid. Not after rent, not after whatever's left. First, the people who actually build wealth aren't the ones with more willpower. They're the ones who never had to use any because the decision was automated once and never revisited. Fourth, if you can stand it, live on half your income for 5 years. It sounds extreme, and it's supposed to. But 5 years of discomfort done once in your 20s or 30s buys a kind of security most people spend their entire working life chasing and never catch. None of these 4 steps require a 6-figure salary or a lucky stock pick. The person earning $80,000 a year who automates $500 a month and avoids the 4 traps will out-earn in net worth the person making 3 times as much who leases a new car every 3 years and calls it an investment in themselves. Notice what all 4 steps have in common. Not one of them depends on picking a winning stock, timing a crash, or discovering some account the wealthy keep hidden from everyone else. Killing debt, building a cash cushion, automating a transfer, and trimming spending are not clever. They're boring, and boring is exactly the point. Stanley and Danko's millionaires weren't unusually sophisticated investors either. They were unusually consistent ones, doing the plain, repeatable thing long after it stopped feeling exciting. Picture the version of you at 50 who did this instead. Same salary, same raises, same $1 million moving through your hands over 20 years. But instead of $43,000 sitting in the account, there's real money working alongside you, throwing off cash every year, whether you show up to the office or not. The gap between those two people was never the paycheck. It wasn't the market either. The market gave both of them the same 8%. The gap was entirely in what happened to the money between the moment it arrived and the moment it either got spent or got invested. Income minus expenses equals investable surplus. Time plus investable surplus plus compound interest equals wealth. That's the whole formula, and it fits in one sentence, which is exactly why it's so easy to ignore in favor of something that feels more sophisticated. It was never about your paycheck. It was always about the distance between what you earn and what you let disappear before you ever get the chance to invest it. So open your account again, not on your 50th birthday, today. The number staring back at you isn't a verdict on how hard you've worked or how much you're capable of earning. It's just a record of every decision so far about where the gap between income and spending went. You can't change the decisions you already made. You can change the next one.